just talk about the running backs. We got Aiden Dennis, dog. Dodie Devon, dog. Sir Hale, dog. He scored 5 touchdowns against Southside. RJ Hogue, dog. Sam Kale, I didn't even know he played running back, but he's a dog. Evan Linker, man. He's a linebacker in my eyes, but I guess he can run the ball.
All right, man. We got 3 RBs to talk about tonight. 3 studs, three running backs with great opportunity year one. Cam Scatterbo, what do you think about him?
Dog.
RJ Harvey.
Definitely a dog.
And what about Caleb Johnson?
Dog.
Right on, man. But before we get into it, guys, over here, Ballsville Gamers, this RookieVille podcast is presented by the Ballsville Game, where we combine fantasy football and poker, which creates big payouts with great odds. All right, Connor, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Ready to get this talk in about these running backs.
Yeah, just the extension of this elite RB class here in 2025. We always had the big ones up top with Ashton Genty, Marion Hampton, and the likes, but we're going to get into some of this, I guess, just kind of the other version of that wide receiver logjam. This is kind of just those mid rounds, late first round, also often in rookie mock drafts or rookie drafts into that second round. So want to get into it real fast. And I think the first one that comes up is going to be RJ Harvey out of UCF, 5'8", 205. Shorter than, I think he's a little small in that regard, but he definitely plays bigger than his size in that sense, because he does pack a punch. He's dynamic. He's very explosive. Obviously, he's kind of like what Sean Payton fell in love with in the film room. He wanted his guy. He got his guy. I just want to kind of hear you riff off just the real big positives of what the opportunity for RJ Harvey is in year one, because I think there's still plenty of bodies there, right? I think just if at anything, I think he's going to lock down the third down role no matter what. He's seemingly the RB1, but he's getting drafted right now in best ball, possibly in redraft as we get into draft season. Is he kind of getting drafted at his peak, at his ceiling? What say you?
So you kind of hit on it. Like you talked about, Sean Payton really fell in love with him. Obviously they took him, in the mid or the later of the second round of the NFL draft. His potential, is up there. With some of these other guys. He wasn't a guy that was really locked into pre-draft or anything. He kind of rose up my boards as people were talking about it a little bit, basically right before the NFL draft. And then he, went in front of some of these other guys I liked, like we'll talk about Caleb Johnson. I liked Scatterbo as well pre-draft. And RJ Harvey was actually the one that, went basically a whole round in front of basically Caleb Johnson. I think Scatterbo fell into the early 4th round. So yeah, he got the draft capital that I like, and you said, there's some other running backs there in Denver, but nobody that really, draws your attention like fantasy wise. You got Estime there that they drafted last year late. McLaughlin.
You always forget McLaughlin's name.
No, McLaughlin.
He's from Youngstown State. That's where my dad went to school. I always remember that. But anyway, go ahead.
McLaughlin, he was supposed to be, the lead back there. If now I've lost the other guy's name. Javonte Williams was was coming back from injury or whatever, but everybody was hyped about McLaughlin. He never really materialized into anything. So I think the opportunity's there for him as well. With the draft capital, I really like him. I personally think he's getting drafted a little high. I've seen him go in front of the likes of Quinshon Judkins. I've seen him drafted in front of Mbuka. I've seen him go as the early, the 106, 107. I think that's pretty high for him, just because of his, his prospect grade wasn't. I mean, as you can see, it's under a 6, which usually is you really want to kind of stay away from that prospect grade wise. But yeah, his potential, especially with the landing spot and stuff like that, draft capital, I like to take him a shot, like the 201, 202, trade a future first in 26 for him is what I've been trying to do, straight up, later first, hopefully. So
trait wise, he's definitely got the Kamara comps, right? Like traits, just the ability to pass out the back, catch out the backfield, whatever. He put up 1,500 yards almost each of the last 2 seasons. 25 touchdowns, total touchdowns last year, 17 the year before. So production-wise, he's definitely there. I just think with the bodies, I think the reason why I brought the bodies is just what if, right? What if Audric Estimé does get the short yardage role. Maybe early on, maybe that changes over the time because maybe he just wins it out. Because I even comped him to the poor man's Bucky Irvin. Like, so maybe this is a Bucky situation where maybe Audric does have that. Did my sound go out? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh, sorry about that. Where talent won out in Tampa Bay. So this could be that situation again. May not. McLaughlin, he's seemingly his biggest trait is the pass catching ability. So maybe he does take some snaps away. Although I'm with the consensus that I think he is the most talented back, and they obviously sought after him. So I'm with a lot of the people that he definitely should be drafted pretty high. I'm just a little worried and cautious about him being overly drafted at his ceiling right now. So that's the biggest thing. Let's play a quick name game. I have 4 or 5 names here for you, Connor, to riff off here. Would you take RJ Harvey in year one, and it's still in dynasty setting?
Okay. So this is going to be year one, or this is going to be dynasty?
I mean, still dynasty is year one. I'm going to say, you know what? Let's do it the same way we did it for the receivers. Let's say dynasty startup. Let's say the rookies are in place.
Gotcha.
But Chase Brown.
That's a close one. I'll take Chase Brown just because I know what's there.
I'm with you there. JT.
Jonathan Taylor. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, Jonathan Taylor for sure.
All right, let me see. Go lower than James Cook.
I might take Harvey there.
Yeah, I mean, James Cook. There's a lot of he had a great touchdown season last year. That should regress a little bit. KW3, Cbomb, Kenneth Walker.
That's about right even for me. I think I would. I wouldn't blame you either way. I think that's probably RBs like right next to each other. Depending on your style,
you would take Quinshon, right? Over.
Yeah, Quinshon for sure.
All right, so I think we got that right there. He's definitely in that kind of RB1 to RB2 fringe-ish there. Probably more in that RB2 for me, but at least as of now. All right, cool. Last thing for you before I move on: 55 receptions, higher or lower in year one for him?
Receptions,
yes.
I'll go lower.
I'll go lower too. Okay, awesome. All right, next one up. Who we got? I believe it's Caleb Johnson.
Right.
Dog. All right, Pittsburgh run zone scheme. Artie Smith, our favorite person, right? He's our favorite offensive coordinator. No, he's not. But at least for me, he's not. But as far as running back is concerned, he's probably pretty good for that, and especially obviously in the last time we discussed Caleb Johnson in our rankings video, I comped him to more of like a faster or more explosive Najee Harris because I think he does it all. I think his film, he runs a lot faster on film, like football fast rather than testing fast. I think he's going to give what fantasy managers hoped that Najee Harris would give them consistently. I think that's more of his outlook, in my opinion, which is why I like him more than RJ Harvey. I still think he offers some pass catching upside. That being said, they already have that kind of specialist in Jaylen Warren, but the only problem with Jaylen Warren is he struggles to stay on the field. So I have a question on that particular workload question a little later. However, I want to hear you riff off on kind of like the strengths and weaknesses a little bit. I mean, obviously he offers the frame of a bell cow. I want to hear more about his speed from you and what you think, and then just kind of more of his outlook for year one and maybe the next couple of years.
Yeah, so kind of a similar situation that RJ Harvey landed into. I like this landing spot, a rough and tough downhill football team in Pittsburgh. Mike Tomlin's there's great. I think the situation there is just a little bit different. Obviously, they have Jaylen Warren. I think that's probably what you're going to ask me. What his upside is year one. I think Jaylen Warren will probably be the lead back for the first. Depending on who they actually get at quarterback, we'll see how good that team can actually be, if anything. I don't even know what their over under on wins is right now with their Will Howard and their Mason Rudolph at quarterback right now. But I think Jaylen Warren for at least the first maybe 8 games or so, maybe even more than that, he'll be the lead dog there. Caleb Johnson will be maybe the third down guy. Maybe their short package guy. He's bigger than these other 2 guys, but he runs just as hard. He runs with a chip on his shoulder, just like the other smaller smaller backs, and he has a little bit more speed, I would say, than the other guys. Although Scadaboo actually surprised me with his athleticism, because when you watch him at Arizona State, you're never like, wow, that guy's a freaking athlete. This guy's just a freaking dog grinding out. But when he tested actually pretty well. I think he had like a 40-inch vertical and like a 11-foot broad jump and stuff like that. He tested really well. Yeah, Scadabo.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I saw the actual the vertical jump too when he tested that, because he just didn't do a lot of the on-field work or the split of the sprinting and stuff like that. But
yeah,
broad jumps and the vertical jump.
Like I said, you wouldn't really. Sorry to get off track on Caleb Johnson, but Scadabo, you wouldn't really think that dude's an athlete. But Caleb Johnson's a little bit different. You're like, wow, that guy has some burst. He's also a dog. He really likes to fight for yardage as well. So I really liked watching him at Iowa. He was probably one of my favorites coming out of this draft class.
Especially like a boring offense in Iowa. He was like really like the obviously he popped off tape, obviously, because he had 21 touchdowns. He had 1,500 yards. He broke away. He ran away from a lot of defenders too. Maybe that was just Big Ten football, where they're not as fast as maybe the old Pac-12, because I know a lot of those teams moved over to the Big Ten. But yeah, you see, like, he led the conference in yards. He led the conference in touchdowns, even scrimmage touchdowns. He's an All-American. He definitely was the guy in Big Ten football. I think
if it wasn't for Genty, a couple of these guys would have been like up people's boards, like, just because of their production last year. Like, we're looking at 20 touchdowns. Like, this is not a common thing. Like,
no,
in the
history. I mean, there's so many. I was actually pretty sure I was even telling you, like, we pulled up the stats, and I was like, are these typos? Do all these backs have 20 plus touchdowns? It's nuts.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have Genty out there just like making them 29. All silly. Yeah, exactly. It's like
absurd.
So.
Yeah, coming off like LT, right? That was probably part of the reason I comped him to that. But no, another comp before we get to some like the name game, and then another couple questions before we move on is he kind of runs upright, right? Like you watch the tape, he kind of runs upright, and that immediately I'm more of a vibes guy. If you guys can't tell already with a lot of these comps, is that he reminded me of Arian Foster, which obviously he was fantasy gold and during his heyday in prime. So I like the Arian Foster comp just off the vibes alone. I think a more middle ground comp is Melvin Gordon. Even he was also very productive. He might not wow you, but he definitely will grind it out, get tough yards. He'll smash mouth football too. He has a little finesse to his game because he offered some pass catching early in his career, not so much towards the end. But I think Caleb Johnson kind of gives those vibes, which is a lot of production for fantasy football. Name game for you. Okay. I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, I have Jacobs pretty clear of both of these guys.
I'll come down a little bit again because I have Kyron lower than Josh Jacobs. Some people might have it higher, but I have Kyron lower. Would you take Caleb Johnson over Kyron?
Yeah, I have Kyron. I have Jacobs a little bit above Kyron, but I have both about the same. So I would take Kyron as well.
Oh, you still take Kyron? Okay, I'm gonna go down again. Let me go to Kenneth Walker again.
So I have, like I said, that RJ and Kenneth Walker are just about even for me. I have Caleb just a little bit above RJ Harvey.
Okay.
So I would take Caleb Johnson just because, like I said, I had both of them basically dead even before.
Okay, so then the last one is Quinshon. You said you would take Quinshon over Harvey. Quinshon over Caleb too?
Yeah, Quinshon for sure.
All right. So they're right around there too. Okay. Awesome. Last question for you before we move on. Because we're about to go to the New York situation. I think this is kind of like the New York situation too, as we get to it, because Tracy and Scadabo kind of are comp to, I think, kind of with this Caleb Johnson and Jalen Warren situation. So I guess just how much will Warren be a pest for Caleb Johnson? For someone like me who thinks that he's going to be that bell cow and get that workload, do you think how much of that will he eat into it? Is it going to be more than just the third down role, more than just the 2-minute drill type stuff? Is he going to be more of a base role and kind of kill Caleb Johnson's, from what I think, year one upside?
I think he definitely will. I think, like I said, the first 8 games or so, I think Warren is going to have maybe 70, 65% of the snaps.
Wow.
So I think it's going to be quite clear at the beginning. They're going to let Warren, I think he's on a 1-year contract now. So they're going to let him, I believe they're going to let him, try to run the ball, try to, keep his spot, maybe have a two-back backfield for the next few years. And if it doesn't work out, they'll eventually, I don't foresee them winning many games unless they get Rodgers and maybe another piece or so. But at the end of the season, I see Johnson taking that role, and I see Warren gone after this year.
On that note, 1K rushing yards in year one, is that possible for Caleb Johnson?
Possible, yes. Likely, no.
Okay, under 1K rushing yards for that. Okay, but you also brought up Rodgers. Do they get Rodgers, or are they sticking with what they got?
A month ago, I would have told you they're for sure getting Rodgers. Today, I'm 50-50 on the fence that I have no.
Dude, I traded Aaron Rodgers for Jordan Whittington and a fourth.
Yeah.
Because I was people thought I was crazy. Like, he's going to sign. I was like, I think he's going to retire. So I just got whatever I could at this point. Seemed like I made out, at least as of now. But he probably will sign like right before the season just because he doesn't want to do any of this offseason crap. But we'll see how it goes. Last one. Our boy, Cam Scott. Just look at the picture, man. Just that picture is a running back right there. I love it. He's a Cali boy, too. 5'9", or almost basically 5'10", 220. That production score definitely screamed volume. Again, second to only really Ashton Genty last year. If it wasn't for him, I think he would have probably been the top for a Heisman. But that's just my opinion. Very gritty, grinded out. But I believe Joe Shane and Brian Dable really liked what they got and tried Tyrone Tracy. I don't think he's going to go away completely. I think there's definitely a contingent out there, even in Ballsville, that I've seen that are obviously drafting Tyrone Tracy over Scatterbo. But with this production profile and this seemingly fit in New York, where I still think that this offense is still predicated on how successful the run game is to open things up for these veteran quarterbacks and Malik Neighbors in the passing game. I still think he's a shoo-in for that RB1A role in New York. What say you?
I wish I could agree with you there. The draft capital always scares me. The fourth round, it's I think I've mentioned it on the pod. It's just a cliff after the third round for RB hit rate. I think it drops like 40% or something like that as soon as you touch the fourth round. And he went early in the fourth, which you can't blame him, but they didn't invest a lot of draft capital in him. And I liked Statabu, pre-draft. I loved his, like you said, prospect grade, production score, all of that. He even tested well at the draft combine, or like I said, a little bit. His athletic score was higher than I thought it was going to be. He was fun to watch. He was out there, talking trash to Genty, basically saying he's the best running back in the country, best running back in the conference, and all that. And, he really put on a show in the playoffs everywhere. Everybody was like, wow, this dude's a dog. And then I think his steam, went down just a little bit pre-draft, and he ended up falling into the fourth, which always gives me hesitancy. And then you got Tyrone Tracy there. I think obviously is going to be the pass catcher. He was a former wide receiver. So Statabu is really going to be limited to maybe goal line, hopefully at best, early on, and then we'll see what he can actually carve out there as in a role.
I think Devin Singletary is going to factor in early on, at least, because he's a Brian Dable guy. He followed him from, not really followed him, but he brought him in from Buffalo as well, and he's there. I think he's going to be a pest early on, at least, too. So there's definitely a few hands in the pot there in New York to start out. I think talent wins out, though. I think this kid is just going to end up emerging, and I think become a crowd favorite, especially as soon as he starts, putting on the beast mode. I think if he starts having those kind of highlight reels in the NFL, I think it's going to be hard to keep him off the field. For sure. At that point. And obviously just save their jobs, like I brought up in past episodes here. Comps.
He reminds me just pre-draft, just off a field, not really off a play style or anything like that, of Deuce Vaughn. I don't remember if you remember the hype of Deuce Vaughn. He was awesome in the playoffs for TCU, was a dog, and then he fell like to the fourth or fifth round to Dallas, and it was
but he's much smaller than
yeah. That's what I'm saying. Not really off of play style or anything like that.
You're just talking about the overall narrative.
Vibe of the guy, just like
I was like, because you're talking about two different archetypes here. But I got you though. I definitely, Deuce Vaughn was definitely very productive in college. I definitely remember that. But archetype wise and comp wise here, I got Kareem Hunt. I have David Montgomery. And since it's kind of day three value, obviously this particular comp, Kyron Williams was drafted in the fifth round, not the fourth round. But again, a day three pick who hit. I don't know to the same degree, because I also think that Cam Scatterbo is a much better pass catcher than Kyron as well. But I think those kind of give you kind of a base, a medium, and a high ceiling outcome out of those three comps. And I think it's possible. But I think if he even at the baseline is Kareem Hunt, is I think is pretty decent and pretty serviceable. All right, name game. Brian Robinson.
I'd take Scatabo over Brian Robinson.
Tyjae Spears.
Yeah, definitely Scatabo.
Okay, I'm gonna go up a little bit. David Montgomery, the actual David Montgomery.
I would take David Montgomery.
Okay, let me try to go
David
down a little bit. Tony Pollard.
Oh, that's
right there. I think that's like the sweet spot.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
I mean, then I'm gonna still test the waters a little higher, but lower than D-Mont, in my opinion. James Conner.
Just because of production, I have to take James Conner. Just because there's nobody there still. I mean, Trey Benson maybe, but
I was going to ask Trey Benson, but like that's just like simply because of upside because he's a younger guy, so future. But I still think we would we both agree Cam Scotabo over Benson?
Yeah. Just go back on Pollard a little bit. Depending on your team needs, like if you're rebuilding, obviously it's going to be Scotabo. If you're competing, it's obviously going to be Pollard. Like another name, like we talked about, Kenneth Walker and RJ Harvey, basically the same thing.
I don't know. Pollard scares me just because of just kind of how the year ended with him. I mean, I think he's going to start out as kind of being productive, but I literally think it might be a half-year rental for Pollard. I mean, even if you are contending, I would be wary to give up on Scatabo. But hey, if you need it, you need it. I don't fault you there. The last question I would ask before we move on here, or pretty much wrap this up, will be: I know he's an ideal complement to Tyrone Tracy.
Yeah.
But how many receptions, since I believe he's going to have pass catching upside, do you think 25, 30 receptions is in reach for Cam Scatabo?
See, I would say if he gets on the field, yes. I'm just like we talked about a little bit. I'm worried, fourth round hit rate is just, I'm not saying he's not going to. I'm just saying I would be pessimistic to say that he's going to be guaranteed play time come, game one of the season. Yeah,
I mean, there's obviously months before this the season starts, so we got a lot of training camp and scrimmages plus preseason to get through. But I'm going to be bullish. 650 yards year one, yes or no?
Rushing or total?
Yes, rushing. Yeah, rushing.
Under. I'll go under.
You're going to go under. Copy that. All right. That's going to do it, unless you want to give one quick sleeper, because I got one in mind if you do.
Well, you go yours. I don't want to steal yours since you already have it.
Well, I don't think you're going to steal mine. I mean, it's the running back out of Syracuse, LaQuint Allen. I picked him up a ton. I mean, if you looked up my dynasty exposure, I have LaQuint Allen a lot just because after drafts he was always available. Even best balls, 24th, 25th, or 26th round, and pre-draft best ball. I just picked him up. I mean, 64 receptions, Connor, in college football in one season. Right. He also was another back who had 20 total touchdowns in last year as well. So the production profile's there. I think he's one of the backs that Jacksonville also drafted in addition to Bashaw Tootin. I think he can earn maybe that short yardage. I'm sorry, 2-minute drill type role over time. I don't know if it'll be in year one because there's so many backs there. But hey, if Travis Etienne ever gets moved, I think LaQuint Allen can step in and fill a certain role there.
Okay, there's two names I want to mention, and they're both basically in very similar situations, I believe. Okay. Taj Brooks in Cincinnati, that backfield after Chase Brown is completely open. They have Zach Moss, had a pretty bad neck injury last year.
They brought back Samaje too.
Yeah, they have. Yeah, exactly. They have, just basically a bunch of names that you would recognize, but not like, wow, that dude's going to be a pest in this guy's size. So Taj Brooks, and then Woody Martz. After Joe Mixon, that I think Dameon Pierce is still there, but besides that, they really don't have much back there. So if one of those can carve out a role, they're two names that you should keep an eye on in your fourth rounds, most likely, of your rookie drafts.
Yeah, I've even seen Woody Marks even go undrafted, especially Taj Brooks. Taj Brooks more so than Woody Marks going undrafted in those back end of rookie drafts, or just like I said, just going undrafted. So pick those guys up if you have the bench spots, taxi squads availability, just in case. A lot of contracts change, a lot of things. If you guys want to go do a deeper dive on your own rosters, I urge you to check out the contract situations, because the complete outlook of a team can change, and you have a guy sitting there who can earn meaningful snaps and opportunity the very next year. So with that said, Connor, we are out. Until the next one, see you guys soon.
That's a wrap.
Just under 25.